Welcome back to the Mostly Unstructured podcast.
We're back.
Ed and Clay back again. That fired us yet. I think I say that every time.
Yeah.
But it's all right. Yeah.
Still true.
It's still true. So we're going to talk today about really unpacking a blog post that we wrote around just how to train an LLM for enterprise.
Yep.
So no jokes today. We're just going to jump right in.
Okay.
I know it's boring. We'll try to bring something back later. But so when we're talking about training an LLM for enterprise, kind of throw out some terminology. So I think a lot of times we'll hear people say, and we've used like corporate language model, enterprise language model.
Sure.
In a lot of our
Domain specific.
That was where I was going. Yep.
Yep.
Domain specific language model, DMSL. What is it?
I can't
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Like that. Yeah. We got too many acronyms.
Alphabet soup.
Alphabet soup. We've sworn we're going to do an episode on
Just acronyms.
Acronym soup. It's
Yes.
coming. We're going to have to do it. But there may be a temptation by some organizations to go, let's train my language model.
Right.
And I think if that's what you're thinking about, if that's part of your plan, I think we would say a hard no.
Yeah.
A good idea.
Right. I mean, it's one of those things that I think, on paper, people can look and say, well, we'll make it specific to ourselves. We'll build it from the ground up. And, that's going to help us with, accuracy and obviously internal knowledge and all those things. But, there's a reason that we didn't hear about LLMs for so many years while they were still being built. Right.
Yeah.
Nobody just turned them on. This was a process over a period of years that, took place to get the right kind of information, contextualized the right way, searchable the right way, and all those things. And, we know in our, kind of the history of the company and, the content world or the IDP world, it's, content in particular, everybody thought, well, how hard can that be? Right. On this, it's a database and file store, just do it.
Piece of cake.
And, lots of, we've replaced a lot of those attempts. I think, this is obviously a very different class of technology, but the lesson is there. It may look relatively simple. It's not.
And the reality is most enterprises really have no business messing around with that. And
No.
so I like to think of it an analogy of, if you're in the web world, you want to build a website, you don't want to have to start from scratch. That's why there's a lot of open source, options out there, like WordPress, for example, or if you're a huge enterprise, Sitecore, for example.
Yep.
That's kind of the same analogy. You also don't start kids in your organization and grow them up to be an employee. No, you go find a really talented person, smart, bring them into the organization, teach them about the organization.
Sure. Yeah.
And then they help you grow your business. And I think that's a good way maybe to look at it. And it starts with what some we term like a foundational models, which like everybody knows, most of those ChatGPT, right? Gronk. I always say Gronk. It's like Gronkowski, but it's Gronk. Yeah, Gronk or
It's probably a good thing.
it's probably a good thing. But any of those, Gemini, you name it, Claude, etc., there's a great place to start, and then using that to improve on your enterprise.
Well, and I think to your point, first of all, there's no lack of options.
Sure.
Right.
Secondly,
Understanding the sort of the specialization and differentiation between those different options, is important, right? ChatGPT, I think, is, probably the best known, right? Or maybe the most used. I don't know the statistics, but, there's a lot of companies, particularly in the R&D world, where Claude is,
Claude
the center,
is amazing,
right?
yeah.
So Claude Code is amazing.
Yeah.
And so, it's that kind of thing, right? It's getting to the point, I'm not saying this is exactly correct, but it's getting to the point where you want to tap into, this sort of more specialized, model, but pick a model, starting from scratch is that's a reach.
yeah. And really the model, and what we're talking about in training your own LLM, your domain specific language model, it's not typically the model, it's the context, right? And what you're feeding it.
Right.
And we talk a lot about how AI can give you really bad results, and that the internet is rife with those examples. Even the simple can't spell strawberry, right? That's gone, viral,
Right.
In the last, several months or so. That at the end of the time, I mean, what's really intriguing about feeding it the right stuff is it's so critical if you don't want to get the bad out, right? But
Yeah.
the old GIGO, right? Garbage in, garbage out.
That's right.
And it's no different than legacy BI. I mean, it's always been the case. If you put in bad, you get bad out. That context that you're feeding it can really backfire on you. And we were talking about how, like, Canada Air,
Yeah.
how
right.
that it happened to them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that Air Canada story broke, I think, in 2024. And, I think became this, kind of teachable moment for people about, when you sort of unleash AI without sort of, I don't know that restraint is the right word, but without governance. We talked about governance in the last podcast. And, this idea that they just fed in lots of policies and information, right? And said, here you go, turn it on. Now we've got a chatbot. And, I don't know if their motivation was, well, that's going to allow us to decrease call volume, which means we need lower call centers. There's something behind it, right? Or maybe it's just people want to self-serve, right? Yeah. So the idea behind it, fine. The issue is because it wasn't governed, the sort of case study was that this gentleman went on the site, communicated with the chatbot, wanted to know about their bereavement policy because he had a funeral to attend. And the bot said, yes, absolutely. Take the flight, come home, submit it, and, we'll credit or refund or whatever that it promised. When he submitted that credit after the fact, he was told, absolutely not. That's not our policy. The court ruled that you're responsible for the AI.
Yeah.
You're responsible for what it's putting out there. And, that you hope is a lesson for all of us. If we're going to expose, right, a bot or however we're doing it, and it's going to share information, I better be sure it's right.
Yeah, and that has context in multiple areas, whether you're in marketing and you're generating something from other copyrighted information, and that there's tons of articles and information on that. Won't dive into that, of course. But in your own organization, if you create this model, your corporate model, and you query that model agentically, and you get bad information back and you go make decisions on that, does that necessarily have the effect that public facing example you used would happen? No, not necessarily, but think about the ramifications.
No, I think that's a really interesting point, because let's say they hadn't exposed the bot, right? Let's say the bot was used internally for their customer service center. And so this gentleman calls up, I'm on the phone with him, I'm the service center rep. I, of course, don't know every policy of the organization. So I go in, it comes back, and I verbalize what it's told me. Am I more or less culpable? The same, right? The same. Because at the end of the day, I gave bad information. I gave the bad information based on this ungoverned, right? Hey, we'll just stand this up, we'll throw it in. And, and I think that we're all having to learn very much in real time, right? It's almost like what we knew yesterday isn't the same today, because that's how fast it's all evolving. But I think that, there's the lesson in that is, you've back to your garbage in. The criticality of what am I feeding it, right? And the idea that I'm going to feed it from scratch, that's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say, like, we're not trying to, this is not fear mongering. You shouldn't be fearful of it, but respectful of it. And you have to understand that, again, it's not to be feared, it's to be.
We use it every day, right? Yeah. We're using it every day. We're using it to do our jobs. we're helping customers with it. I think to your point, this is not driven from a point of be afraid of AI.
Yeah.
It's be smart about it.
Be smart about it. Be
right?
aware.
And I think that the reality is there's this sort of rush. I feel it. I think we feel it as an organization. Like, how do we use it to propel faster, to have that competitive advantage, et cetera? But you have to juxtapose that against, how do I make sure that what I'm, putting in is right? How do I make sure it's secure? How do I make sure it's governed? How do I make sure I'm not seeing what I shouldn't be seeing? Like, how do I manage all that? And, I think that's what we're trying to get at, is that sort of rush that I think people are feeling has them skipping past good, sort of educated deep dives into how do I do it right?
That's right. Yeah. So one of the temptations could be, well, I just need to, I'm going to take this LLM, take this model, and I'm going to refine it. I'm going to fine tune it.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's great. Like, it has good results. There's good that can come out of that. But one of the things we covered in our post on that, briefly covered about fine tuning, was that it may tell you what you want to hear in the tone, in how you want to hear it, but it doesn't always tell you what you really want to know, because it's not always based on the knowledge. It's based on the response, and that's one area of it. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but just fine tuning isn't the final answer. We would say, well, if you want to get this information and you want to be able to query that data, what about all of the information that's coming in real time? And RAG is one of those great other acronyms out there.
Yes.
That people throw around and don't think really can explain. Well, explain the layman term. We won't go into a deep dive on that right now, but what is RAG and why is it so important when you're training your LLM?
Well, I want to step back just for a second, is what you were saying, because I think there are some terms. The terms themselves have been around, but not necessarily in the context of technology. Bias, right? Toxicity, right? Hallucination, right? The word's been around a long time. Maybe not never, but certainly not words I associated with technology until, more recently. One of the things that, to your point of, well, I'm just gonna, kind of throw some stuff in here, into the LLM, is you can inherently introduce all of those. You could potentially be introducing bias because of what you're feeding. You could be introducing toxicity. You could be, and particularly if you stand it up from scratch, right? Is I've just made it, with my bias, any toxicity that's built in, and hopefully not hallucinations, but whatever. I think where RAG comes in, is it's this idea of taking the core LLM and, supplementing it with kind of key data to help with decision making, right? To your point about kind of using a layman's, approach, I'm giving it, a supplement as opposed to building from scratch that, would be more specific to me, my organization, my, those things that shouldn't in and of itself, add some of that bias, that toxicity, et cetera. Right.
And we're going to go where we always go. And that is, as a information intelligence company, Keymark is like, our passion is information and content and data.
Right.
And not just getting it, but making it clean, making it contextual, feeding it into your systems, your data lakes, right? And fueling enterprise AI through intelligent and ingestion. And at the end of the day, we're processing. We're not just documents. We're not just processing documents. We're making that context, we're making that information contextual, and usable.
Yeah.
And that starts with, so often what we've talked about on other podcasts is intelligent document processing. That ability to ingest the information, that what the vast majority of information is untapped gold, we like to say,
in
an organization. But also that isn't, caveat that was, you may not want to ingest all of that. We certainly understand that. But how do you get all of that information out of the unstructured data? That's so important. if you're going to build your own LLM. Why? Because that is the truth source. And doing that through IDP is, I think, mile number one. Would you agree?
I totally agree. Well, and I think to your point, we talk about unstructured a lot. It's in the podcast name. Unstructured has, in my mind, I would divvy it into kind of two parts, right? We've talked a lot about the content at rest, right? Things I've been storing for years and unearthing that, because that's that 80 to 90% of unstructured information that's sitting in that organization. There's also all the day-to-day transaction flow, the new information, that's coming into the organization. So how am I ingesting that and parsing that and making use of it in real time as well? So that's one of the big questions. So as you think about, IDP as a technology, whether you're talking about that inflow of new information, whether you're thinking about, that data that's been at rest, our organization, our technology category, for as long as I can think about it, there was this expectation of absolutely dead-on accuracy at the end, right? Years and years ago, it started as, well, what's your OCR accuracy percentage? And we've talked about the fact that that's not the right question. The right question is, what's the accuracy when it goes into the system? So years and years ago, AP was, you're doing AP all the time. Well, you can't exactly, say it would be okay to read a bunch of information off an AP invoice and, well, we got about 85% of it right, and we'll just, rip it into the ERP, and I'm sure that'll be great. Like that's an absolutely unacceptable scenario. Right. That's kind of how people are approaching some of this AI and LLM development, and it is like, it's mostly right. It's directionally correct.
Yeah.
And, in our industry, because the work that we do is typically around, sensitive, regulated corporate information, directionally correct is not okay. It's got to be spot on. So, we think about it through the context of, okay, I'm going to read information. Is there information I can go look up to supplement it, to validate it, to make sure that what I've read is correct? Is there, a human in the loop step that can take, the combination of those and make sure it's okay? And, what IDP, the evolution of IDP has done is say, we can do that for lots and lots of different use cases now that we didn't used to be able to address. But what it does for us is it applies that same level of rigor that was, this has to be dead nuts accurate to go in the ERP at the end of that AP thing. Now it applies it much more broadly, so that what goes into your RAG, your Retrieval-Augmented Generation, which just rolls off the tongue.
It does.
That what goes in is you can count on. It's not going to lead to that, hallucination that should scare the heck out of every executive that's overseeing.
Right. Which is why it's important to bring in the right organization, the right people to help you with that. And we did a whole podcast on how to choose that right vendor.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, that's good enough is not good enough.
No.
We cannot emphasize that enough. When you're making decisions, 90% of the way there is not good enough, and that's still important.
I mean, you think about, there's some of the top things that could have immediately came out. Here's how you can use agents and bots, and it's kind of AI behind it. Like, think about technical support, right? Immediately everybody was like, well, I can stand up a bot.
Yep.
Right. That means less calls coming into my call center. Which means either I can focus on the best stuff or however you want to handle that. And that's great. What are you going to feed it? Well, you're going to feed it your knowledge bases. You're going to feed it your, maybe your support case data. You're going to support it. Well, what's in that case data? This goes back to the governance question. Is there customer information in there? Is there customer, actual like server information in there? Is there? Probably, because these systems were completely internal previously. Right. Yeah. Now we're saying, well, let's let it ask, let the public ask questions.
And you expose that data to outside your walls.
Correct. Yeah. Now, that example might be, one where people go, okay, we get it, duh.
Yeah.
But it's that sort of oversight that just has to be present. And so, the accuracy, that's, the reason that I get so excited about IDP is, is we apply that rigor that, has been in existence in our world for a long time that isn't necessarily being observed by all the organizations that we see out there.
So at the end of the day, if you're going to train a model, context and content is so critical. We use content and information and data kind of interchangeably, but it's what runs your business and it's what's going to grow your business. And so any final thoughts on if I'm getting ready to do this, if I haven't, because this is a new thing. I mean,
sure,
not everybody's jumping on this. There are solutions that can kind of come in and layer over the top and can pull some things authentically, and you can get a lot of information from that. Those are great, and those have use cases that we would support all day long. But if you're really going to get serious about this, any final thoughts on how to build out your own LLM and your own domain specific language model?
Yeah. Well, I think nice job on this trial.
Yes,
yeah.
By the time we're done, I'll have a doubt.
Perfect. Well, I was trying to figure out how to work in this example. I have a friend who likes to play around with these models, and he managed to use RAG to teach and create a model that responds to you in sort of 80s, 90s hip hop, vernacular, which is pretty awesome.
Completely useful, by the way.
Completely useful.
Like, will change the world without a doubt.
Without a question.
Yes.
The thing that, kind of more seriously to your question, the thing that I think, is happening is, so people got a hold of the we'll call it the public models, right? And so they did a lot of testing and they decided, well, that's not giving me what I want. It either is lacking specificity or it's wrong or whatever specificity. So, the challenge is, I know, right? My mom would be so proud.
Yeah, I know.
The challenge is, of course, that what I think has happened is people have gone, well, now let's swing the pendulum over here. Well, that public model didn't work. I'll just create my own.
Yeah.
And I think, what we're saying is, look, there is this good place in the middle, right? Which, takes that public model, the one that you think fits your business the best, going back to your point, like maybe it's Gemini, maybe it's ChatGPT, maybe it's, Claude. But then there's this RAG piece, right? And this ability to supplement the model with your business's intelligence without spinning it out of, into a bias, a toxicity, or those kinds of things. But I think, the point we're trying to pound home is that piece, that RAG piece, how you feed that, what you feed that, the accuracy of that, the governance of that, the oversight of that is, where you can go from, I've got all those efficiencies that we're all reading about, and productivity and whatever, or, now I'm having to defend myself against having to put out bad information into the public.
Essentially, we like to say, this is a great way to get ROI out of your AI. Like everybody's see what I did there?
Yeah.
Oh, it's taking.
How long were you working on that?
No, I've been saying that for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You can ask around.
Okay.
It's been great. Yeah. I didn't know. And AI did not create that.
Wow.
No, I know. It's created most of everything I've said so far. No, that's actually not true. But at the end of the day, are you just getting some AI to get some AI? I mean, there's so much money being spent on things that aren't getting a return. And we can't hammer that home enough that this is one of those areas that will result in a return.
I think that, kind of to round off your point and give the listener a break, I think that MIT study that everybody's now loving to cite with the 95% failure rate, speaks to exactly what you were saying with the get AI to get AI, because what it talked about was a focus on superficial outcomes, right?
Yeah,
which is exactly what you just described. I need to tell my boss, we've done AI,
and
and
dandy metrics,
and that is not that's not how, that's not going to pull the organization forward.
That's right. I mean, yeah, some people may or may not keep their jobs in that, but
Right.
be a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be a hero. Do it the right way. So we know that a lot of the things that we talk about here, I'm sure, create additional questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't always do this, but I do want to invite, any listener to engage with us.
Yeah.
You can go to our website, keymarkinc.com. Look us up, drop in comments on the videos if you're watching them through YouTube, and engage with us. Like we there's no way we can fit everything into these podcasts. They're meant to give some information to create maybe some curiosity, some questions. And we would love to engage with people. So
that'd be fantastic.
And usually, like I say at the end, if we've said something brilliant, then assume we planned it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll see you next time on the Mostly Unstructured podcast.
Thanks, everyone.